Here at MacGyver's Workshop, we build, fix, or re-engineer just about anything. You never know what we'll be working on next. And if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of MacGyver's Workshop. Today, we're working on, this is one of my regulars. We just put some wheel bearings in the front of it here a while back, and we realized that it had some tie rod issues as well. And of course, you know, nobody's made of money, so you know they had to save up for it. But this one here, if you notice, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's a good bit of free play in there. And the other side's about the same. So I'll show you what all the parts we're going to replace, and you know, we're going to need a bit of special tooling to do this job, so I'll show you what we need to do there too. So let's get cracking. Okay, so what we're going to be replacing here is the inner tie rod end. Okay, and that's pretty much mostly what's bad on this car, the inners. But given the mileage on it and that they haven't been changed, we're going to go ahead and replace both the inners and the outers, and it'll be a done deal from there. And then of course the boots, you know, they go over the end of the rack like this, and the ones that are on there are getting a bit dry rotted, so you know, as cheap as they are, might as well put new ones on there while we're in it. So, but in order to get these off, you know, you'll notice they have a lock washer on them that once you get it in place, you'll bend the bit of the washer over there to lock the inner rod end in place so it won't unscrew itself. That would be a rather catastrophic event. And but you'll notice, you know, it's a bit of a funky end on there, and you would think, you know, you could just use like a crow's foot wrench, but it's not going to work. So what you have to have is one of these. Okay, and it's a special tool. In this case, it's going to be the 1 1/4 here, which will get in there and get that tie rod out. And then this is the collar and sleeve that reaches in over the existing tie rod. And once you get it in there, then you can get this onto that. And I'll show you a little more in detail about it here as we go, and get you a better look-see at it. Okay, to start off, we're going to remove our outer tie rod from the spindle here. Now, there's not a whole lot of light here, but then we're going to take that boot off and slide it out, and that way we can get, once we get this tie rod loose off of here, then we can get our tool on there to get that inner tie rod out. So what you'll need, of course, you're going to need a 19mm socket for this, and of course I've already pulled the cotter pin out of it, and then your requisite BFH to separate that out of there. I've already got the steering wheel locked in center, and taken some measurements so I can get it back relatively close, so the friends can drive it to the alignment shop and get it aligned. So we shall proceed. And we will take our nut off here. And this is always the most favorite fun part, right here. And out she comes. Hear that? That's the sound of nasty tire wear and sloppy steering. Okay, so what we got to do here now, we got to take this retaining nut off. In order to do that, you have to hold the inner part of the tie rod in here so it doesn't spin, and then just work this loose. Now this isn't exactly just going to fall off of here, so that's why I'm using a wrench. As you get closer out to the end, it'll loosen up and come off without too much fuss. And then we can slide our boot off. What's left of it, this one was broken. Again, you can see just a flexible kind of ball and socket joint, but hear that free play? That's pretty considerable. Now we have to unlock our lock washer that's on here that keeps this one from coming off. So we'll do that and we'll be ready to take it off. And now we have our tool in place here. See if we can bust her loose, huh? That's what it takes right there. And of course it's exceptionally nasty because there's lots of grease in there. Once you get it out so far, and it's a stiff thread, but once you get it out so far, then you can unscrew it the rest of the way by hand. And there it be. And you can see that you can't really see too much there, but that's loose as hell. And we pull our old lock mechanism off of there, and we're ready to go back with the new one. Okay, so when we're going back in with the new inner tie rod in, you want to make sure that your lock mechanism or your lock washer, it has two little ears, little tangs on it, and you have to make sure that it sits into the corresponding slots into the rack, because that's what keeps this from rotating. And then once you're finished installing your inner tie rod in, then we'll bend the ears, bend the corners over to match the flats on the inner tie rod in, which will keep it from ever rotating or unscrewing itself. So it's always important when you put these in to make sure that those tangs are lined up in those little grooves, because if you don't, then it'll be useless as a lock mechanism. So you kind of, it's a little more art than science. You have to hold it in there as you're screwing the inner tie rod in. Now I have this one in already. I haven't bent the ears over yet, but you can see how much tighter that is. You don't hear that gunk, 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 free play. And we're about to bend those ears over now to lock that in place so it doesn't ever come unscrewed again. So some people may suggest using a little Loctite on there. I particularly don't care to do that, because that just makes it damn near impossible to get the tie rod end off later on when this one finally wears out. So anyway, I'll go into a little more detail on this when we get to the other side. I was in a bit of a hurry yesterday afternoon trying to get this done, and as it turned out, I still ran out of time anyway, but we'll carry on this side with regard to bending those little ears over and installing the replacement boot. We'll go from there. Okay, now after we get those little ears bent over on the little locking tab, and it's time to install the new boot. So all we have to do is slide it on. Very simple. They just use zip ties to hold it in place because there's not a lot of load or stress on it. And all we have to do is push it in and then let it seat itself. We'll have to seat it over the end of the rack and pinion, which we'll have to pick the car up to do that. Let's go ahead and go back up with it. Okay, moving over to the passenger side. Of course, we've got our same free play on this side, and likewise the protective boot is broken. So we're going to pretty much do the same thing here that we did on the other side. Knock her out and get her done. You'll see that this one, when the boot broke, had gotten wet. Let me zoom in on that for you. And you can see the rust built up in there, starting to rust. So that's what's been going on there. And of course, it's got all its free play too. Not as bad as the driver's side, but it's there. And it's very noticeable when you're driving. Move this time rod. You can see, let me zoom in there. I was talking earlier about the little ears that locking tab goes into. You'll see that see if that thing can focus in on it. You'll see the little ears on this washer, and zoom into that end of that rack. And you'll see there's two slots in the rack there. Right there and there. That these two little ears sit into, and they hold that washer steady. So when you bend the ears around the flats on the new tie rod, it'll retain it, keep it in place. We're going to make sure we've got our washer in there proper. Okay. So we've got our other inner and outer tie rod end in. We got the front end eyeballed up as good as we can get it. Of course, now the owner will have to take this straight away and get it realigned. But no more No more slop in the steering. It's nice and tight, and you won't hear all that clunking and banging every time he goes over bumps, because that is what exacerbates that wear in the inner tie rod end. Every time you hit a bump, you feel like you've got a bunch of marbles hanging out underneath the car or something. So they'll be happy with that. So let's button the wheels up and roll her on out of here. Okay, so we're calling this one done. So what we've done is we've changed both the inner and outer tie rod ends on a 95 Nissan Maxima. And surprisingly, the hardest part of the whole job really was getting those rubber boots back on the rack. They were tight to squeeze. But the rest of it went real smooth, and now my friends will enjoy a much better ride here as soon as they get it lined up, of course. I don't have an alignment rack, but still saved them a ton of money. Appreciate you watching. Please subscribe, comment. The annoying ads are what pays the bills. So if let one play through now and again, throw me a bone. And of course, if you ever have any questions or comments, you can either post them here on the videos. I welcome all comments, and or you can email me at MacGyversWorkshop@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Take care.